We're about to peel back the curtain on a man who thought mocking you was his throne, only to discover the crowd is laughing at him instead. Here's the thing. Studies in psychology show that arrogance isn't a sign of strength. It's actually a cover-up for insecurity. People who overinflate themselves are usually the ones most terrified of being exposed. And that's exactly why the arrogance of this person has become his downfall. The more he mocked, the more he revealed what he was afraid of. The suspense? He didn't know the laws of life don't bend to pride. He thought tearing you down would make him untouchable, but instead, it backfired. And now, ironically, he has become the show, the meme, the joke that no one takes seriously anymore. And here's the sprinkle of humor. Arrogance is like walking around with spinach in your teeth while bragging about being the sharpest dresser in the room. Everyone sees the flaw except the one talking the loudest. There are people who walk into rooms radiating a kind of false light. It looks impressive at first, but if you look closer, you realize it's just a reflection bouncing off something else. That's the kind of confidence arrogance produces. It isn't built from battles fought and victories won. It isn't carved from long nights of discipline, mistakes, and growth. It's a costume borrowed from attention, applause, and temporary admiration. And costumes, no matter how flashy, always come off in the end. This arrogant person strutted around as though he had mastered life. He laughed at you, mocked you, and tried to belittle your worth because to him confidence was just about how loudly you could project yourself in front of others. But there's a problem with confidence that's not rooted in truth. It cannot stand in silence. It cannot withstand isolation. It cannot endure when the crowd walks away. And that is what's happening now. The crowd that once clapped for him has grown tired, and without their borrowed validation, he looks small. Real confidence doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need to perform. It breathes in quiet strength, the kind that remains steady when no one is looking. But he never had that. What he had was a temporary loan from other people's approval. The moment life demanded proof that he was as solid as he pretended to be, the mask slipped. And now everyone sees that his arrogance wasn't the overflow of inner security, it was the shield of inner emptiness. What makes it worse, and ironically funnier, is that the same people who once believed his act are now laughing. Because when you borrow something and pretend you own it, exposure always comes. He mocked you for your struggles, but those struggles are what built your unshakable confidence. He avoided struggle, and instead wore pride like a badge. And now people see that the badge was fake all along. So the truth is plain. His confidence was never his. It was borrowed from applause, borrowed from flattery, borrowed from image. And now that those loans have been called back, he has nothing left to stand on but the humiliation of being exposed. When he laughed at you, he thought he was crafting a permanent stain on your name. He wanted others to see you as the joke, the weak one, the person who could be ridiculed without defense. But arrogance is short-sighted. It never considers how quickly tables turn, or how brutally the crowd can change its focus. The very energy he used to try and humiliate you has now circled back. And instead of you being the subject of mockery, he has become the punchline that everyone enjoys repeating. What he failed to realize is that people don't actually respect arrogance. They may clap for it in the moment, they may laugh along to avoid being the target, but deep down, they are waiting. Waiting for the slip, waiting for the downfall, waiting for the moment when the arrogant one reveals his cracks. And when that moment comes, the same audience that once laughed with him now laughs at him. The laughter is louder this time, not because you've been embarrassed, but because he has been exposed. It's almost ironic. He wanted you to look like the fool, but destiny ensured that his actions built his own stage of ridicule. Every insult he hurled at you became a brick in the wall of mockery that now surrounds him. Every laugh he provoked at your expense has echoed back with twice the volume, trapping him in the very cycle he tried to throw you into. And the crowd, they don't forget irony. They find it entertaining. They'll retell the story, share it, laugh about it, and replay it, because nothing is more satisfying to people than watching arrogance eat itself alive. Your survival and calmness are what truly made the difference. You didn't have to fight back with the same energy he used. You didn't need to throw words around or prove yourself through noise. The simple fact that you endured, that you stayed grounded, exposed him more than any defense could have. While he turned himself into a caricature by trying to shame you, you quietly stood as proof of dignity. And dignity always outlasts arrogance. Now every time his name comes up, people remember the fall, the irony and the embarrassment. He mocked you, but the laughter is his burden now. He has become the meme, and you have become the message. People laugh, they clap, they nod along, and the arrogant one believes he has secured his victory. But time has a strange way of exposing what's real and what's not. The laughter that once sounded like triumph begins to sound hollow, even cruel, when people look back on it. What once made the crowd cheer now makes them cringe, and that is exactly what is happening to him. His mockery has not aged well, it has decayed, and the stench of it is now on his reputation. Mockery only feels sharp when people don't yet see the bigger picture. At first it looks like strength, it looks like dominance. But as the story unfolds, the truth always comes forward. People begin to ask questions. Why was he mocking in the first place? What was he so desperate to prove? And when they see that the one who was mocked has survived, grown and stood firm, the mockery suddenly looks ridiculous. Instead of making you small, it has made him look smaller than ever. That's the danger of arrogance. It doesn't consider legacy. He thought people would remember his words as cutting and clever, but people remember them now as bitter and insecure. They sound outdated, out of touch, even embarrassing. What once seemed like a display of confidence is now replayed as proof that he lacked depth. His mockery has become a time capsule of his immaturity, frozen in place, while your strength and endurance keep evolving. What he never saw is that mockery doesn't just fade, it flips. It turns into evidence against the one who delivered it. The audience that once cheered has now switched sides. They laugh. But it's not with him anymore, it's at him. They see the pattern, they see the insecurity, they see the hollowness behind the noise. And the more time passes, the worse it looks, because dignity never goes out of style, but arrogance always does. Now, his mockery stands as a permanent reminder of who he really was when the mask slipped. It hasn't aged into wisdom or influence, it has aged into shame. And the same crowd that once echoed his laughter now whispers about how foolish he looks in hindsight. When he stood tall, loud, and seemingly untouchable, people rushed to admire him. They praised his confidence, they copied his style, they fed his ego as though it would last forever. He believed that admiration was proof of greatness. But admiration built on arrogance is fragile. It cracks the moment real pressure arrives. And when that crack appeared, when his mask slipped, the same people who once applauded him suddenly saw through the performance. Now his story is no longer one of influence, but of warning. He is the example parents whisper to their children when they want to explain how arrogance leads to downfall. He is the cautionary tale in quiet conversations, the one people bring up when they want to highlight the danger of letting pride blind you. He wanted to be remembered as powerful, but he is remembered as the one who crumbled under the weight of his own ego. That is the destiny of a temporary idol, glorified in the moment, but mocked in the aftermath. Meanwhile, you have become the reference point. People don't measure his success anymore. They measure his failure against your survival. They look at how he laughed at you and compare it to how you endured without breaking. They weigh his arrogance against your quiet strength. And every time you come out standing taller, you are the one they point to when they want to describe resilience, the one they reference when they talk about enduring storms without losing dignity. He believed his shine was permanent and yours was disposable, but the opposite has happened. His light flickered out because it was built on shallow foundations, while your steady flame has become the guiding mark others look to. He has become the "don't do this" story, while you have become the "this is what survival looks like" example. That is the difference between arrogance and endurance. Arrogance makes you loud for a moment, but endurance makes you unforgettable. He thought he was untouchable, but history has already decided he was temporary and you became the reference point. He believed the stage was his throne, that the applause was proof of his superiority, and that mocking you from that platform would seal his dominance. But arrogance always forgets that stages don't protect, they magnify. And when the mask of pride slips even slightly, the entire crowd gets a front row seat to the collapse. Every word he spoke, every gesture he exaggerated, every attempt to belittle you in public was meant to make him look invincible. But the more he performed, the more cracks showed. Arrogance isn't sustainable. It always demands a bigger show the next time, a louder laugh, a harsher insult, a riskier display. Eventually the performance outpaces the person, and when that happens, the stage turns into a trap. His own need to keep impressing people became the rope that tightened around his reputation. The applause he once lived for has now transformed. People no longer clap in admiration. They laugh in disbelief. They don't see strength in his arrogance anymore. They see desperation. And nothing destroys arrogance faster than the sound of people laughing at what was supposed to be intimidating. That laughter is not harmless. It's a verdict. It tells the world that the act is over, the mask is shattered, and the audience is no longer under the spell. The irony is that he built that stage with his own hands. He sought visibility. He demanded attention. He wanted to be seen as the biggest voice in the room. But the very visibility he worshipped became the weapon that turned on him. His flaws, his insecurities, his hollow confidence, all of it is amplified by the same stage lights that once made him feel untouchable. In the end, his downfall wasn't caused by silence or opposition. It was caused by his own need to shine brighter than everyone else. The stage he thought would immortalize him became the gallows that hung his arrogance in plain sight. And now the applause is gone. The laughter remains. And his legacy is not triumph, but exposure. Ego can look impressive from the outside. It makes a person speak boldly, walk with full certainty, and demand recognition. But without depth to support it, ego becomes a burden, not a crown. And that is exactly what happened to him. He piled pride on top of pride, stacking it higher than the strength of his character could sustain. For a while it looked as though he was winning. But cracks eventually appear when the weight is more than the foundation can hold. Character is what keeps a person steady when no one is watching. It's the backbone that holds up confidence, the quiet strength that keeps the soul balanced. Without it, ego is like filling a fragile jar with stones. Eventually, the pressure shatters it. He lacked the strength, the honesty, and the humility to balance the pride he carried. So when life pressed on him, when circumstances tested what was real, he broke. And the collapse wasn't hidden in private, it was public, undeniable and humiliating. The people who once admired him saw it happen in real time. They witnessed how quickly the arrogance that seemed powerful turned into insecurity exposed. They watched how the same confidence that once attracted them dissolved into excuses and defensive behavior. What they thought was strength revealed itself to be an overinflated ego. And once that realization hit, the admiration vanished. No one respects a fall that was built by pride. They only shake their heads and say they should have seen it coming. The tragedy is that he could have carried less and lasted longer. If he had balanced his pride with humility, if he had built substance alongside his performance, he might have endured. But arrogance never shares space with wisdom. He chose to load himself with appearances, with noise, with the need to always look untouchable. That weight was unsustainable, and now his story stands as evidence that ego without character doesn't elevate, it crushes. Everyone saw the collapse. Everyone knows the truth. His ego was too heavy for his character to carry, and when it broke, it left him not as an idol, but as a warning. He believed insults were sharp blades that could carve away at your dignity. But every word he threw said less about you and more about what he was trying to hide. His ridicule didn't reduce you. It revealed him. And the reflection staring back was not the image of strength he wanted people to see, but the insecurity he was desperately covering. Ridicule always works that way. When someone tries too hard to humiliate another, the audience begins to notice the pattern. They start asking why he's so invested in tearing you down, why he feels the need to constantly highlight your flaws. And the longer he mocked, the clearer it became. He wasn't exposing you. He was exposing the cracks in himself. The sharpness of his words became a confession of his envy, his bitterness, and his lack of inner stability. Instead of making you look small, his mockery magnified how empty he really was. The irony is that the insults only strengthened your credibility. You didn't have to respond, you didn't have to argue, you didn't have to prove anything. By staying grounded, you allowed his words to reflect back with full force. Every time he opened his mouth against you, he dug his own hole deeper, and the people who once sided with him began to turn. They could see who was truly insecure, who was desperate for attention, and who was rooted in truth. What he thought was a sword became a mirror he couldn't escape. He swung harder, trying to make the reflection disappear, but the more he mocked, the clearer the truth became. His ridicule backfired because it revealed exactly what he wanted to hide, that he wasn't confident, he was fragile, that he wasn't superior, he was intimidated, that he wasn't untouchable, he was threatened by your quiet strength. Now his words are remembered not as wounds against you, but as a record of his own brokenness. The insults were never your burden to carry, they were his confession in disguise. His weapon against you turned into his mirror, and the reflection destroyed the image he tried so hard to protect. At first, arrogance can feel like real authority. It's loud, it's commanding, it makes people pause and pay attention. It can even draw admiration because some confuse arrogance with confidence. But arrogance is a product with a shelf life. It spoils over time, and when it does, the very people who once cheered begin to recoil. His downfall proves this truth. The pride he carried like a crown has reached its expiry, and the crowd no longer applauds. They laugh. And that laughter is the loudest reminder that the time for arrogance always runs out. In the beginning, arrogance has a shine to it. It feels untouchable, even magnetic. People are drawn in because it creates a sense of certainty, even if it's false. But with time, arrogance reveals its cracks. It demands constant performance, constant validation, and constant attention. When the energy fades, when the act grows stale, the audience grows restless. And once they stop being entertained, arrogance quickly becomes unbearable. What once looked like leadership now looks like insecurity dressed up as noise. That is the shift he didn't anticipate. He thought pride would carry him forever, but pride is perishable. Authority rooted in character endures, but arrogance decays with every passing moment. People eventually see through it, and when they do, the respect they once offered turns into ridicule. The applause he relied on has become mockery, because what was once tolerated is now a joke no one takes seriously. The expiration date on arrogance doesn't just mean people stop clapping, it means people start remembering. They remember the cruelty, the mockery, the way he treated others when he thought he was untouchable. And when they see him now, stripped of that false power, they laugh not out of joy, but out of vindication. They laugh because arrogance always ends the same way, exposed, weakened, and humiliated. His pride has reached that point. The mask has worn thin, the shine has dulled, and the arrogance that once looked impressive has expired. What's left is not authority, not admiration, but a lesson. And that lesson is clear to everyone watching. Arrogance is temporary, but its expiration always arrives. And when it does, it doesn't go quietly, it ends with laughter. Arrogance makes noise, it shouts, it boasts, it demands attention. It thrives on quick moments of applause, but it doesn't have staying power. Survival, on the other hand, is quiet but undeniable. It doesn't need to scream because endurance speaks for itself. When someone comes through storms without losing dignity, their very existence becomes proof of strength. That proof is louder than any insult, louder than any act of pride, and it cannot be silenced. He thought his mocking voice would drown you out. He believed arrogance would overshadow your struggles and paint you as weak. But what he didn't anticipate was how powerful it looks when someone survives. People might laugh at you in the moment, but when the dust settles and you're still standing, the laughter dries up. The same crowd that once entertained his arrogance now sees the undeniable fact. You endured. And that is something arrogance can never compete with. Survival creates a kind of authority that arrogance can't imitate. Arrogance may wear the costume of power, but it doesn't last when tested. Survival is different. It comes with scars, with history, with evidence. People look at you and see what you've walked through, and that alone silences mockery. Even without words, your resilience exposes his pride for what it really was. Performance, not strength. He shouted, but you lasted. He boasted, but you endured. And in the end, endurance always has the louder voice. The most striking part is how survival rewrites the narrative. His arrogance made him look untouchable for a moment, but your endurance makes you unforgettable for a lifetime. Pride can only impress while people are watching, but survival continues to speak long after the moment passes. Every storm you survived became a living testimony that arrogance cannot erase. Now, when people compare the two of you, the contrast is undeniable. His arrogance has faded into laughter, But your survival has become the proof that strength is not about noise. It's about lasting. He didn't know survival is louder than arrogance, but now everyone sees it. Your endurance didn't just outlive his mockery, it silenced it completely. His rise was quick because it was built on noise, spectacle, and arrogance. People cheered because he entertained them, not because he inspired them. And when the show got old, when the mask started to crack, those same voices that once shouted his name began to laugh at him. Their loyalty was never real. It was borrowed, conditional, and ready to vanish the moment he stopped amusing them. Crowds are fickle. They will cheer today and mock tomorrow if the foundation isn't solid. He mistook borrowed attention for genuine respect, but rented applause always comes with an eviction notice, and that eviction came swiftly. His arrogance drained the interest of the very people he thought would stand by him, and now he stands exposed, stripped of the temporary power that once made him feel untouchable. Your story is different. Respect for you doesn't come from performance, but from truth. People may not have always clapped for you loudly, but they observed. They saw your endurance, your strength, your quiet resilience in the face of storms. Respect built on truth doesn't expire because it isn't dependent on entertainment or noise. It doesn't vanish when the spotlight moves. It stays because it's rooted in something real. That's why when people compare you to him, the difference is undeniable. His name sparks laughter because it's tied to arrogance that collapsed. Your name sparks respect because it's tied to a story of survival and dignity. He had the stage, the noise, the clapping hands, but none of it lasted. You had the struggle, the scars, the silence, and the persistence, and all of it became unshakable evidence. The irony is sharp. He believed he owned the admiration of the crowd, but he was only renting it. You, on the other hand, never sought their approval, yet you earned their respect permanently. That is the mark of truth. It may not glitter as fast as arrogance, but it lasts far longer. His popularity was borrowed, conditional and disposable. Yours is rooted, lasting and permanent. And the permanence of your respect will outlive every laugh that now follows his fall. Arrogance might win applause in the moment, but it always carries a hidden countdown. People will cheer loudly when someone struts with pride, but deep down, they're waiting for the stumble, the slip, the moment when arrogance exposes itself. It's not loyalty they're giving, it's anticipation. And when the trip finally comes, the same crowd that once clapped is the first to laugh. That laughter isn't just amusement, it's relief. It's proof that no one is too big to fall. He thought his arrogance secured him. He thought the mockery he threw at you made him untouchable. But arrogance blinds people to one crucial truth. Crowds don't respect pride. They tolerate it until it entertains them no more. And once the entertainment shifts, the tyrant becomes the show. His downfall wasn't just seen, it was enjoyed. The very people he performed for are now replaying his failure as their favorite moment of irony. Mockery always boomerangs, and his story proves it. He used it as a weapon to keep others small, but it only magnified his own fall. People no longer remember the jokes he made at your expense. They remember how quickly he became the joke himself. And nothing spreads faster than the humiliation of someone who once thought he was invincible. His trip isn't whispered in pity, it's shouted in laughter, because everyone secretly loves seeing arrogance collapse under its own weight. This is the irony he never accounted for. While he tried to make you look powerless, the spectacle of his own stumble became more entertaining than any insult he could have created. People may have laughed at his jokes before, but they laugh harder at his downfall now. And that laughter is louder, sharper, and far more lasting. In the end, his arrogance ensured his own stage became a comedy act, with him as the unwilling star. He didn't realize that people love watching a tyrant trip, but now he knows, because his trip has become the story everyone retells, not out of respect, but out of delight in watching arrogance boomerang back to where it came from. He spoke to impress, to shock, to leave sparks in the air that dazzled for a moment but disappeared just as fast. People clapped at his explosions, but clapping doesn't mean respect, it means distraction. Fireworks are beautiful in the sky, but they don't build anything. They don't last. They're entertainment, not legacy. His arrogance was noise, not substance. Meanwhile, you were laying stones when no one was watching. Your voice didn't need to echo across rooftops. It carried weight because it was rooted in truth. While he aimed for applause, you aimed for permanence. That's why when the smoke of his fireworks cleared, people saw what had always been beneath their feet, your foundation, steady and unmoved. It wasn't flashy, but it was trustworthy. It wasn't designed to be admired for seconds. It was designed to hold for lifetimes. The world is full of people chasing fireworks moments, big entrances, bold claims, loud performances. But the crowd always wakes up when the sparks are gone and asks the real question, what remains? For him, nothing remained but the smell of burnt powder and the memory of arrogance. For you, what remained was proof that endurance is louder than performance. People now see that his brilliance was staged, but your stability was earned. Foundations are not glamorous while they're being built, but they're the only thing that survives storms. That's why his collapse was inevitable. The stage he built on fireworks had nothing holding it up. The lights fooled people for a season, but when time demanded proof, it was your quiet work that spoke. He's remembered for noise, you are remembered for resilience. He left smoke, you left ground. And now the crowd that once looked up at his fireworks looks down to where they stand, and they realize they're standing on what you built. They may not have cheered you in the beginning, but they respect you now because they finally understand that foundations outlive fireworks every single time. For a while, the sound of people laughing with him made him feel invincible, as if the crowd's approval was proof of his superiority. He mistook their entertainment for loyalty. He believed their laughter meant they admired him, when in truth they were only amused by the performance he put on. Crowds don't stay loyal to the performer. They stay loyal to the feeling. And the moment that feeling changes, so does their allegiance. Arrogance is blind to this truth. It convinces a person that applause is devotion, when it's really just distraction. He thought the people were on his side, but the same mouth that laughed at his mockery found it even funnier when he slipped. Crowds are quick to shift because their loyalty is shallow. They don't love the arrogant, they love the spectacle. And when the spectacle turns, so does their laughter. That's the trap he walked into. He thought mocking you gave him power, but it was only giving the crowd a temporary show. The moment his pride cracked, they didn't hesitate to switch sides. Overnight, their laughter pivoted, no longer at your expense, but at his humiliation. It didn't take a scandal, a grand failure, or a dramatic fall, just a small shift in perception, and suddenly he became the punchline. This is the danger arrogance never sees. It doesn't make people truly respect you. It just makes them wait for the moment you collapse. People will laugh at your jokes, but deep down, they're waiting for the day the joke becomes you. He thought he owned the crowd, but he was only renting their attention. And rent always comes due. Now the laughter he once lived for haunts him. It isn't shared joy anymore, it's mockery. The same sound he thought proved his power now proves his downfall. He learned too late that laughter is fickle currency, and arrogance spends it faster than it can be earned. You don't need to chase laughter because you carry respect. He needed the noise to feel big. You only needed truth to stand tall, and that's why today their laughter no longer crowns him, it condemns him. He spent so much time building an image of power, convinced that his arrogance would secure him a permanent place in people's memory. And he was right, people do remember him, but not in the way he expected. Instead of admiration, his name carries ridicule. Instead of respect, his story is told as a warning. He wanted to be the legend people looked up to, but he became the example people whisper about when they want to explain what arrogance does to a person. There's a sharp difference between a legend and a lesson. A legend inspires, it calls people to rise higher. A lesson, on the other hand, stops people from repeating mistakes. He became the kind of story parents and mentors tell, not because he was great, but because his fall was so public, so humiliating, and so preventable. His arrogance rewrote his future, and instead of being remembered as untouchable, he's remembered as undone. This is what happens when someone mocks a chosen one without realizing that survival leaves receipts. While he laughed at your struggles, you were building silent victories. While he flaunted himself as untouchable, life was already preparing to expose his cracks. And when the curtain fell, everyone realized the truth. He wasn't a model of strength, he was a warning of what happens when pride goes unchecked. That's why the laughter around his name feels different now. It's not the kind of laughter that entertains, it's the kind that teaches. People laugh because they see the irony. They laugh because they remember how loudly he boasted and how swiftly he fell. They laugh because arrogance always promises immortality but delivers embarrassment. And the laughter lingers not as applause but as a reminder. Don't be like him. Meanwhile, your endurance reshaped the story. You became the reference point for resilience, while he became the case study for arrogance. His memory is useful but not glorious. His legacy is a footnote, not a headline. He thought he'd be remembered as a giant, but history only remembers him as a caution sign on the road to truth. That's the ultimate twist. He sought to be the legend, but God allowed his arrogance to etch him into history as the lesson. In the end, what we've witnessed is not just the fall of arrogance, it's the triumph of endurance, integrity, and truth. Every boast, every insult, every attempt to belittle you has come back to reveal the fragile foundation beneath his pride. The crowd that once cheered him now laughs at him, and for a reason. He built on performance, spectacle, and borrowed admiration, while you built on substance, resilience, and undeniable strength. Where he was temporary, you are permanent. Where he burned bright and fast, you stood steady and unshakable. Where his words were fireworks, yours were foundations. He tried to weaponize ridicule, manipulate perception, and elevate himself at your expense, but in doing so, he revealed more about his weaknesses than about your worth. Every act of arrogance, every attempt to dominate only highlighted his insecurity and left him exposed. You, on the other hand, didn't need to fight with noise, force, or theatrics. You let survival, dignity, and quiet strength speak for you, and they spoke louder than any mockery ever could. His story will be remembered as a lesson, not a legend. Yours will be remembered as a reference point, a standard of what true resilience looks like. The laughter that now surrounds him is a warning. The respect that surrounds you is proof. Arrogance fades, but endurance outlives it. Pride can entertain for a moment, but truth commands attention for a lifetime. Your story is not about revenge, it's about revelation. It's about showing the world that arrogance can mock, but it can't overshadow. It can shout, but it can't last. And in the quiet aftermath, it is your strength, patience, and truth that will have the final undeniable word.